welcome to the NEWSPASTE Podcast. I'm here with someone who I'm going to introduce you to today. I mean, I'm probably being introduced around the place because not many people know me, and I'm going to introduce other people. That's part of what NEWSPASTE is. And this guy is going to get a little bit of a place on NEWSPASTE as well. I'm gonna put up his show every week so that you can get to see whenever it's out. So you get to see. I don't want to make promises for him. And the man I'm talking about is Ryan Graham. He's a lovely guy. He's a creator of the Independent Review, which is advertised as a weekly show highlighting clips from the top independent journalists. And there are some around, there are a few. And it is a really, I mean, he has put me in amongst some of these great names. Some of my clips have made it amongst the reels. And I mean, for independent journalists nowadays, it's really important for us to have a connection and have an ability for other people to spread work and show people that there's not just one or two faces in this pool. There's a lot of faces, and it's important that everybody gets to see everybody's work and read every side of the story, whether they agree or not. So this is Ryan Graham, and like I say, the Independent Review is something you should follow, and we're going to have a fun conversation today and get to meet you. So Ryan, welcome to the NEWSPASTE Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Johnny. Glad to be here.
Yeah, man. I'm really happy to have properly made contact with you. So, like, what's your background? Where have you come from? Where were you born, sir?
Sure. My origin.
Yeah, let's get back to our proximal origin of Ryan Graham.
Of the clan.
Yeah. Of the clan Graham. Well, we'll talk about your deep heritage later.
There we go. Yeah. No, I've lived all over, but I was I won't go too deep, but born in Missouri, lived all over. Family was in the federal government for a while, so that's why we moved all over the place. So I grew up surrounded by, normal federal jobs, other relatives in, CIA, DEA jobs, but like my dad was just a normal USDA, help farmers, work with that. Kind of grew up. So I lived in Missouri, lived in, big cities there, St. Louis, lived in DC, outside of DC in the sticks of West Virginia. We moved to Montana in the freezing cold. And then right now I'm in Oregon still. And that's kind of where I've been most of my life, where we settled. They lived in a bunch of other states, but kind of been all around. Grew up here, pretty normal life. We're definitely not like a wealthy family, paycheck to paycheck, make it by, but we had food on the table. Went to school, still paying for school. And my buddy that I went to school with, I've known since fourth grade football, he wanted to start a business and asked if I'd join him. And so we've just been doing custom t-shirts, little, brick and mortar store for the past 10 years. And some interesting stories, with dealing with the whole government regulation shutdown that we tried to defy as much as we could in 2020. And it was about 2019 when I got my first exposure to more, actual independent journalism, not the mainstream. Never liked just there's always that two-party bias. It's just so obvious to see of, you got the MSNBCs and the Fox News, and it's just, this isn't really news. It's just a kind of crummy opinion by, giant corporations. So that was, and I've always been more of a contrarian to the sense of if you try to tell me something, then I'm probably going to do the opposite for the most part. Or if it's, if coming from authority. Obviously, my parents have been I'd always listen. But outside of that realm, I was, and coaches, it was, if the main's telling me to do this or go see this movie or see that, I'm like, I don't think I want to go that route. So that led me to my buddy bringing up Jeffrey Epstein. And at the time, I mean, gosh, the most I'd ever really gotten into was, starting to kind of realize stuff about 9/11 and a few other things like the Vegas shooting. I was like, there's some weird stuff going on. But, I never dove deep, never could find much. So, I just kind of went about my life. But when he brought me, he's like, you got to check this Epstein out. July of 2019, it was like right as he was being arrested before his suicide. I mean, what is my Wi-Fi name here when I was trying to get this set up. It's NSA on one, and Epstein didn't kill himself on my other. It's just to mess with the neighbors. But that was a big opening. The first interview I found, because you search that, then I was getting into more podcasts, where before I was stuck listening to like Howard Stern every day, and that was driving me nuts. He was getting on my nerves.
But you kind of get into that, so that these big names and the big faces, and they're the alternative. They become the alternative to news, and I think that happened for quite a while. I think everybody can touch on, can really get in touch with this. But the alternative to the news, when the news has been dying, has been comedy programs.
Yeah, that's 100%, 100%. And that led me to the few interviews I could find, just being kind of new to podcasts and get off terrestrial radio, was there was a handful with, Whitney on there just talking about Epstein and the whole rabbit hole. And that just, from there, I kind of just found any interview that she was talking about. And then that led me to more and more and more people that were involved in that. And that was just the Epstein stuff. I mean, we weren't even getting into, it was, almost 2020. So, but where that really led me to was James Corbett was next, and Ryan Christian, if I get that right. And that, I was very fortunate. I didn't have a ton of others yet that I was, following it right as we're going in 2020, but it was I just feel a debt of gratitude to the whole community, because I feel like without even that led me to being able to see real news where it's source material. They're not just saying, they'll tell you if it's their opinion, right? But here's the source, here's this study, here's what's actually going on. Here's, we got the Kushners doing the Operation Warp Speed with Donnie. We got this going on the side. It took 2 days to get this, coding from China just to get everything. I was like, well, that's kind of odd, and then you put other basic things, knowing that when they start saying, now we're going to shut down. I didn't talk to them, but I even had a random conference call when they were trying to tell us to shut down with, like, Trump came on the call. And I can't do a Trump impression very well, but he was on. He's like, it's going to be great. We're fine. It's China. We're going to get it taken care of. It'll be a few weeks. And I was like, but we're going to take care of small business. Don't worry. I was like, what the is this? Yeah. I'd like, no, I was like, we're going to stay open, and Oregon was different. Not to go on too many tangents, but my sister lives in the Midwest now, not by choice, but that's where her husband lives, and that's his job. So it was pretty wild seeing, even in this state, in Oregon, the different areas of, I'm not sure how it was where you are, but like completely polar different as far as restrictions and lockdowns and just society of how people would be masked or not, or care or not, or it was a wild scene where we were, and you could go 40 miles out to be totally different, or you go to another state. It's like it didn't exist, period. Not that it did anyway, but the illusion of it.
I definitely had, You see, you're telling me like your journey, and I'm digging it and getting it completely. I've had a similar type of journey. A very similar type of journey. I was completely really unknown when I was doing my writing in 2016, 2017, 2018, and it was only when I started reporting on Nicole Youngkerman and her links with Jeffrey Epstein did things start to roll. But by that time, I'd already been listening to Media Monarchy, James Evan Pilato, nearly every single day, and able to go and watch Corbett whenever needs be. And of course, I passed by all of the people like Whitney and like Ryan Christian, and I kind of seen them all at the start. They're starting off because I was already deep into. I was writing this stuff, and I remember when I started off, like no one's one of my first articles got like 250,000 reads. That's a lot of reads to have and zero backing, and just on like one of those you put it up yourself sort of websites. And yet for me, I wasn't mentioned anywhere ever. So when James Evan Pilato mentioned my work, and I was just like blown away. It was just like, wow.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, that's amazing. And then like, He just one of he. I mean, he's what is. I was a musician as well, and I mean, the reason why I started up into journalism was because of that. Really, the big sadness of the fact that the music industry was dead. It was being destroyed by policies on the ground. So the town I'm in, Cardiff, the capital of Wales, is like is the home of song. It used to be the only place in Britain where you didn't need a busker's license because it was written into law that you could, sing on the streets of Cardiff.
Cool.
It's like Wales is the land of song. And then they just closed down all of the clubs. All of the places that were open were closed down because they built swanky apartments in the city centre, and no one's allowed to play music anymore. And it become like what their vision of 15-minute cities look like, where everybody behaves themselves and becomes all clean all of the time, and everybody keeps the noise down, and and all of this, and everything's stale, and soon you don't own any of your stuff, and you just walk into it, and so on and so forth. And I saw it heading towards all of that stuff, and I found an independent musician called Headache from a band called Ice Cream Headache in the UK, a real good punk band, but his songwriting was off the scales. He had written albums where he nailed everything that was coming perfectly, and kind of that inspired me to look at everything and be like, there's one song that was the manager and the security guard. So it's all that's going to be left in every shop is the manager and the security guard. But when he wrote that song, you went in and there was no computers and technology in every shop. There's no kiosks where you serve yourself. So it had that sort of like feeling that he was looking ahead of his time. And I think all of these sort of like indie music that really led me to love Media Monarchy, man. It was just such a brilliant show, and then just like pump up the volume as well, and it really inspired me, and it gave me kind of a soundtrack to work by. And when you're talking, just to skip on, when you're talking about that start of COVID, because it was like one of the first questions, of course, I'm going to ask you is about your experience during COVID, because you're obviously going to have intriguing experiences. But when you're talking about looking around and how it was there, I had this weird thing, because it started off, I was in Cardiff, and then I moved to Chile 4 days before they locked down in Chile. So I got there, and it was an extreme lockdown where we were allowed out with police permission for 2 hours a week, and you have to do everything within that 2 hours. It was insane, and the police check you, and the security check you on every door. We watched people not being allowed in shops because they're like just trying to buy food for their baby and stuff. Like literally the worst type of shit. They just will not help people. It was awful. It was dystopia. Everybody in Chile was completely messed up. They wouldn't serve you unless you were, everybody, children in prams. It was awful. It was one of the worst things that I think I saw was, the difference between that and then coming back. Because after 3 months, came back to Britain, and then it was like, you can walk around without a mask on again. And everybody in my area is like, just forgetting about it. And it's like small talk about it. But most people, if they do, they just like, they go around their chin and they just, all right, if you complain,
it's here.
For God's sake, so that kind of got different, because I'm from a city like Cardiff. It got different when you went out into the rural areas, and then you had loads of people who were much more scared. When you live further away from people, you're less likely, I think, to discuss what's going on around you with people who are outside your family. So you tend to be better safe than sorry. But I saw this difference, because then I spent 6 months in. Over 6 months in Britain, and then went back to Chile and saw this backwards and forwards, and it was like over there it was a completely different thing. Over here it was chilled as hell. In between, going from airport to airport to airport, you had loads of different reactions to it. Like sinister and severe. So that's a really interesting thing, like how the culture on the ground affects it. So you're like, when was the first time? This is a brief thing that I really love asking people. It really gets to the nub of people's experiences. when was the first time you truly understood what was coming? When was the first time that it went from not realizing that there was about to be lockdowns and this was really real to there suddenly being lockdowns and this being real?
Yeah, when they first, that's a good question, because, you see some writing on the wall, and obviously the states were a little different, and each state within the states, was a little different, and definitely nothing like what you're saying in Chile. I think I even saw a video of a really elderly lady not even be able to get in to get her groceries because she didn't have like some kind of card or something like that. It was crazy. But I would say, you start hearing these rumors like they're going to have martial law come out and do this. And I was like, oh, damn, that seems kind of nuts. Like, who knows where this is going to go? And so when they announced, was it the first, I think they said 15 or 10 days was going to be the first kind of lockdown leading up to it. I was like, well,
2 weeks to flatten the curve.
Yeah. I was like, well, I'm still going in. I mean, like, and we told our employees too, you don't have to, but we're going to go in. I know making t-shirts is not essential workers, but I was like, small business, we're a paycheck to paycheck, they're paycheck to paycheck. We are. I don't know anything other than Donnie's little, we'll take care of small businesses little, phone call was, I was like, we gotta eat too. And, my wife was in, medical field, with like orthopedics. So they obviously shut down. So she was here, and actually she was smart because they were kind of saying the writing on the wall. This was just in the Oregon sense, the Oregon Health Authority. They were, obviously she was about to have a baby. So right at that same time, before everything went down, they had some people say, just take your maternity leave now. Just go now. Like everything's going to go to crap. They're going to shut stuff down. We don't know when it's coming back.
Was this like March 2020?
Yeah, March, because
your baby's born in April, yeah?
April, yeah. So this was even probably the end of February going into March. They're like, just go now. Just go now. So it was actually pretty early because she with our girl, she basically worked all the way up till she was ready, like maybe a month. She's like, okay, I don't want to have birth at work. But so kind of got a little writing on the wall there of like, well, this state, we might be doing some different stuff than what I'm hearing in like the Midwest or Texas or Florida. So, okay, we're keeping our eye out. So I just said, well, I'll just go in. We'll print orders we need to. Obviously, we weren't getting half the stuff we were getting. Ironically enough, we're getting a lot of shirts for old people, or like old folks' homes. Like, I don't know if they're trying to boost morale when they lock them in their rooms or something.
Did they? I take it they didn't say don't trust the government on it. Right?
Yeah, no. You're not gonna make it past the next 30 days.
When you said you weren't essential business, well, I think if you can print "Don't trust the government" on something,
right,
classes as essential workers.
Yeah, that's right. So that's kind of when I was like, well, I don't know when this is gonna stop, and then. Just the more I would get watching a lot of you independent journalists and media members of kind of giving their updates and where they're going through. I was like, man, it's all over the place. Like it's, the feds say one thing, different states say other things. Some people obviously don't care in certain areas, and there's areas out here where they didn't care. And there's areas like where we work where like people are still masked up with tons of stuff while they're driving by themselves. That, the whole spiel. So I think it was like a month into that is when we're finally just said, hey, if you guys want to like just come in, we'll do our thing. No one's going to stop us. And no one did it. It wasn't that kind of strict like, Chile was. And we're pretty, even in Oregon, the states are pretty, unless you're in like a major city downtown, it's so sprawled out with how many roads and how open it is. It's really hard to like, you'd have to have some infrastructure.
Pop out the car window and travel across the air and get right up into a child's nose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't like. And luckily, our girl wasn't in school yet, so I was like, "Thank God, I don't have to deal with this crap." Because everyone I know pulled their kids out, and they're like, "We're not doing this. We're gonna homeschool our kids." They're making kids eat lunch out in the pouring rain here and snow, and it's just like, what are we doing? And then the teachers wouldn't wear masks, but they'd make the kids. I was like, no. But ours, honestly, like was it this April? This April was the first time they stopped requiring masks for like my wife's work. Yeah,
was insane.
that's how it was here. Now, granted, we're not as hardcore as you have 2 hours to go out and shop. That's pretty crazy stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That
Um,
was peak stuff. It ended up going into some sort of what was interesting in Chile is that they introduced stuff in Chile and it was a test it and within like 6 months it was happening in Britain and happening and it was they were testing it out there because they knew people would just accept it straight away, but they have to slowly introduce it in the other places till it gets to that stage.
Yeah,
because they will be more likely fight back, and it's
so
all
they're the
about,
guinea
like,
pigs.
well, when you've got Pinochet in recent
That's true.
in history,
That's
you're like,
true.
all right,
Yeah.
let's not argue.
Okay.
Get your mask on. Shut up.
Sir.
Show the pass. Yes, whatever.
But you know what it got me thinking at that time, and obviously listening to all the stuff going on. And mainly I was really just listening, especially a lot of Ryan's stuff at the time and Corbett's, was these studies that were coming out. Study after study that pre-COVID and currently, and then the trials they were going through with Pfizer and everything. But a lot of just even the mass studies and, Stanford's review, peer-reviewed, random controlled, like what they're called the gold standard, not just, a preprint. Not that you can't have a good preprint. I mean, even that can all be questioned, right? Even the peer-reviewed system. But if that's what they were going by, and he was showing, I was like, man, this really, like, and you see the restaurant thing. I don't know how it was with you, but it'd be like, you could go in here with a mask, and then the second you sat down, apparently it doesn't, travel higher. And I mean, I don't get how even just that, if you didn't know anything about anything, logically, that's one of the most obvious, dumbest things I've seen.
Yeah, logic went out the window.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. People were losing their shit besides getting toilet paper everywhere and like loading up on, the fast food is open, the liquor stores, the weed shops here. Not that I'm against any of that stuff,
but the
it was
kids'
interesting
toys
what they tried to
have like boundaries and plastic over in the UK.
Oh, yeah.
And it says not essential items. Stop it. Stop buying your kids stuff to play with.
What it got me thinking of, and you guys were already all ahead of it, but before everyone was really breaking down kind of what they saw it leading to, was making me think, at least here, because of how wide open we are, and it really would be hard to really control every state, to the degree of how spread out we are, at least here in the States. In cities, it'd be easier. I think that's half the point of the 15-minute kind of cities, to really get people in these areas, and it's easier to control. But my thought was, man, if they're trying to do this with, like, the vaccine cards to get in places and masks for this, or checkpoints here, I was like, the only way this is going to work is digitally. You can't do it via paper. Too many, all this stuff you can't. And I was like, uh-oh. And then, like, the first thing I saw just randomly talking about in the U.S. of, well, by 2025, unanimous bill passed to put a kill switch on cars. For in case you have a drunk driver, nothing else, no, nothing.
Just an OJ Simpson.
Like,
it's just for OJs. That's all.
It's fine. Yeah. We'll shut down the Bronco. Like, I'm just like, that's a little, I was like, well, that makes sense. And then it's, right on cue, everyone is kind of like, yeah, this could get, as soon as they can get kind of any digital ID, digital currency, we are hosed as far as that kind of control. I do wonder about how a lot of the old people here in this country could handle it, because they can't even handle smartphones right now. So I'm curious how that would work. But it worries me. That's where I started really thinking, oh, we're screwed for the future, not just this year, or in Oregon, 3 years of junk. But
yeah. It's hard to know what's going to be the next calamity, whether they're going to pull out another virus, or whether it's just financial, or whether it's a big cyber catastrophe, or whether it's some sort of something that appears from the sky, like a big glowing object.
Look over here.
Oh my God, it's Mr. E.T. himself, and he comes out. What's he saying? Believe Henry Kissinger. That's all. Goodbye. That's
all hail.
Yeah, all hail Kissinger. Round the universe, we have decided he is the most superior person, and you should relook at all of his life and agree with him completely. Put his brain in a jar. Yeah, you know it. You know it. This is so. Yeah, well, one of the things you were saying there that was really, I thought you might go into another direction with that because one of the things you saw in Chile almost straight away is they got rid of all menus. All menus, all paper physical menus went really quickly, and it was all of these QR codes that were on everything, and it was really awkward, especially if you've not got the best generation phone or you're trying to stay off the matrix. Then it gets really hard, and you of course have to invest in their technology then to be able to use this stuff. And I was at one point, oh man, this is freaky. So I was like going back between Britain and Chile, and in Britain there was none of this. They're still all using paper menus, and no one's even thinking about it. Because if you say to a load of British people, "Can you scan that?" They'd be like, Can you just bring me the menu and shut up, please? And where's my beer? For God's sake, you don't get necessarily the same response as you would in other places. So I thought, that's quite amazing that that Chile would be that far ahead, like technologically ahead. And I was walking through Santiago one time. I was in Santiago and I was doing an order everything, and I'm walking around, and there's these people, and they got their cameras, and they're right up close to this tree. It was a nice sunny day. They're right up close to this tree, and they're taking pictures of the trunk. It looked like that, and I was just like, what are they taking pictures of? And I realized it's a little QR code that you scan that can tell you what type of tree, even though there's apps that allow you to tell you. It was a little QR code, and it was this kind of thing to get used to interacting technology with nature, and then it takes you out of nature. And suddenly these people are scanning the QR code to look at a picture of a tree when there's a tree right next to them. It doesn't make any sense. And then soon the QR code is going to be a relic. It's just like a transient technological solution. It's not even something that's going to be around for much longer. Before you know it, like you won't need you will know what you want, and you will scan the area of what you want, and everything will know what you want because Henry Kissinger is inside your mind.
That's right.
Yeah. But
man.
Yeah, that's why it made me think of that. How has that been over in where you've been? Have you seen many production of that?
I have. It's a mixed breed of the town you go to. I'd say the closer you get to the major city, you're going to see a lot more of that. The QRs outside, I'd say it's 50-50 depending on the restaurant or something like that. I just talked to Havari about that in Mexico, and he just ran into that this weekend. He's like, I don't even have my phone on me, and they're like, well, what do we do? He's like, I don't know. Tell me what you have. And I was like, and he's like, well, we have this tablet. You can look at the tablet, and, and they're trying to talk environmental. And I'm like, so the lithium in the tablet is more conscious than the paper of the menu? Like the amount of little slave labor you got to get that lithium in that tablet right here. Because that's kind of how they push it here too, is like an environmental thing. And I'm just like, I usually go to places I know. Ever since probably 2020, excuse me, I've been very selective of where I go even more to like, I'm going to go to places that I knew didn't do those things in 2020. If that makes sense?
Yeah.
Because a lot of them now they're fine. And I was like, I know some of you were just trying to get by. And I know some of those owners. And then other ones, they pulled together and they didn't go crazy defying in the streets, but they just said, you know what, we're open. Come on in and we'll just leave it be. And those are the ones I was like, all right, you're good eggs. I'm going to go there. And the other places I remember, the only time I remember I put one on my chin because I just wanted to it was my daughter's birthday and she wanted to build a bear. And I took her in the mall to get one. I was like, I got to do it. And I put it there. And even then they were like, well, your mask isn't our kind of mask. Or maybe it was the Disney store. It was one of those. And I was like, what do you mean? I was like, well, we have our own. I was like, what, do they got a chip in it? Or like your own special like virus built into it? I was like,
Disney mask nowadays will have a massive dildo on the front.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, they'll be like, no, you have to wear this one, this autoerotic mask that we've got over here, next to all of the kids' clothes, of course.
Don't mind the dildo and the stuffed animal we're going to give to your child.
Seriously,
yeah, for real though.
Sweet shop in Cardiff with dildo chocolate right in the kids section. I know. You can't make it up. Anyway, sorry, go on.
Yeah, that was the only time, and we were able to get it, and I just stood there and said, "I'm not doing anything else. Can you just give my kid her bear?" And that was that. But yeah, I remember those places, and I try to. So luckily, I think in my experience, at least my individual, which obviously isn't everybody, I don't see as many QRs. But when you're going places and walking by, yeah, almost every window of a lot of storefronts will have a QR code, or even at the gas station or the grocery store is going to have some sort of code for something. But even now, I've been really trying to push. If I go to a grocery store, it's like the guy who's lived in this town for 100 years that still owns it. It's not the big corporate one. He's using local produce, at least trying to do. Yeah, you're trying to really be more community wise. I'm not trying to virtue and prosper here, be like, look, I'm doing this, but I don't know. It just made me more focused on, the Saturday markets, the local, buddies that I know that have their own cattle or their own, orchards and their own fruits and veggies. Even if I do my own little small garden, whatever I can do to.
I think there's a negotiation of like this. I don't know what it is. I can't describe it. It's that sort of. You have to carefully select the people that you are willing to support, but then there's a certain amount of people who it's not their fault, they don't understand, and you meet them and you realize that, and you're willing to bend your unbreakable rules. But then there's the right bastards. So like in a place, there's a supermarket called El Tit in Chile, and I was standing in an El Tit with my baby in my arms, trying to buy baby food and diapers without a mask on, and the girl refused to serve me. Yeah, that is what they call evil. That is great evil. That is one of the worst type of evils you can imagine. That type of stuff is like, can you not see who you are when you deny something so basic? When you're not willing to bend the rules, and that's the thing, is that there's a load of people in that same supermarket. I remember there was a guy who was really old, and I let him go in front. And when I had this standoff with him, he basically took her side and tried to get me to...
Oh, God.
And I had been like polite and lovely to him, and I thought, oh, well, that's just the way it is. But this is what I'm talking about. There's like a trade-off, in like a virtue trade-off here. So I'm like, I'm trying to stand by my point, but I know at the end of the day, they're going to win because I need baby food and diapers more than, So they know they're going to win. The one guy, though, I'm polite to him and I let him go first, and and he's very nice. He only sides with the other person because he believes it's true. And if you believe it's true, then it's not really his fault. And he's siding with a girl who maybe he's a bit of a gentleman and all of that. So there's loads of trade-offs, and they're all like virtue trade-offs. Like, who do I try and impress the most? And it gets me really annoyed when I get into those situations and I can see all that happening. I become really annoyed really quickly.
Ditto.
Did you have like your worst experiences during COVID in that sense? What was your worst experience of like service during the whole COVID or denial of service? You had
I had it better than most because I know I've mentioned you to him before. Another guy I kind of found leading up to finding yourself and other, journalists was a guy who was in Eugene, just south of here. And that was just as nuts as Portland up here. And his name was Scott Armstrong. He has a Rebunked News and does some stuff for T-Lab too. And he got fired for his job for stuff. And I kind of went his route a lot where just like, you know what? I don't care. I'm going to go places that I know on the down low are cool. Just like, I think that's why people started coming, to us more, because we had more people come in and be like, oh, I don't have to do this, than just throwing a fit, screaming like, where's your mat? Where's this? Like, because we took a very neutral, approach. So my worst experience, I mean, the craziest was probably when my son was born, just because that was right in the beginning. Mostly it would just be usually not trying to be, but I mean, I got to be honest, like it's a very overweight, crazy lady in like a grocery store would start screaming at me. That'd be about it.
Well, we've had that when it wasn't COVID, but still.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. And, with her basket full of like, I don't know, donuts and just, I don't know, every frozen food thing you could think of is just trash mayonnaise.
I'll tell you a story after you tell me this.
Okay. But there would be that. And then, I wouldn't get any super shouting matches or anything. I'm not a super confrontational person. I'll just go about my business and kind of just give you the nose and kind of tell you to piss off and leave. Especially when I'm mainly dealing with like overweight ladies. I don't want to be on YouTube for that reason. No, I just went through. If they kicked me out, I'd tell them to kick rocks. And most of the time though, I would just find places that people I knew. And I just like, I'm going to go to the places I know. And I knew enough to get by where that wasn't an issue, if that made sense. So I kind of got lucky in no crazy restaurants. And half of those places I'd be like, I don't need to go to this type of food anyway. I don't need to eat out. I'll make my own food. I'll go to this grocery store because I know I might deal with some crazy customers, but the people working there are cool to me. And I'll, give them the business. So that I was lucky, I think, in that sense. I could go further enough to a place that I knew was like, we're not doing this kind of junk. So I really didn't get too much craziness. It would be just the random customer in our place who might have a freaking meltdown. And then we just tell them, well, you don't have to come here. If it's, it's fine. It's like, yeah, it was more the craziness in the very beginning when my son was born, because he was born extra early, like my daughter. And I had the OBGYN and the midwife were there, and they started arguing with each other over what to do because he wasn't coming out right. And the nurse next to me, my wife's just trying to give labor. So she's just trying to do her thing. And the nurse is looking at me like, I don't know what's going on. They're fighting. They go out in the hall to like discuss what to do. One wants to push, the other wants to do a C-section. I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a. I definitely don't know that, Ralph.
Just cut it out, would you? Just get it out.
We'll figure it out. Yeah.
I mean, the arguing. Just cut out the arguing. I didn't mean cut out the baby. Oh my God.
And then at that point, with stuff in the hospital, COVID like seems to go out the window with them. It's like everything's just so hit or miss. Long story short, wife has to go get a C-section. They bring me in, put me in like I wouldn't say hazmat suit, but I look like a painter's suit. I go back there and he's not breathing. So they're like, well, we're going to put him on the CPAP machine for a while. And there was like, I remember 3 doctors to the side, and one on a TV screen. And then another doctor came in, I think just because I was in the same gear. He's like, oh, hey, what's going on here? I was like, dude, I'm not a doctor. I don't know what the hell's going on. I was like, my son can't breathe. That's all I know. He's like, oh, sorry. I thought you were. I was like, no. And so they said, normally we'll go like 20, 30 minutes. And if not, we need to shoot him up to the bigger hospital. Cause his oxygen level's too low. He's not breathing. But they have a bunch of restrictions. So we'll see what we can do to get you guys in. Cause they're not allowing anyone else in. It was just myself. At least I was in with my wife. I was happy for that. And lucky enough, they let him go another 30 minutes. He still wasn't really, breathing enough. And so they said, let me try one more thing. This was the midwife lady. She's like, I got an idea. And I remember doing this with my daughter was, just the skin to skin type, bonding. And after he peed on him, they handed him to me instead of peeing on me, but he's done that plenty since. I just sat there with him for like 30 minutes. He laid on my chest, and like within that 30 minutes, he was golden, and he was back to normal. And we haven't had any, luckily, knock on wood, situations since. And then just from there, that was the weird thing of like checkups, like just trying to go to the doctor with that kind of junk was just like, and I feel fortunate we didn't run into anything where they're trying to mask our kids, because I wasn't doing it anyway. But it was just, I don't know, that was a sticky situation in the beginning. That would probably be my craziest thing. I don't have any, I wish I had a good crazy, fight or
I
brawl
got
story.
I can
But
tell you, I got terrible. I mean, I wasn't allowed in Chile. They'd closed the embassy and pretended it was open, and the phone would just ring and ring and ring and ring. They wouldn't answer any of
oh,
their emails and all of that. So I missed the birth of my child, and it was just like that was really a really like a sad moment, a sad
that'd be
of the
rough.
whole
Yeah,
thing.
I can
Oh
imagine.
man, there was loads of there's been especially over the past few years, loads of rough moments in my life, I can promise you.
Yeah.
And a load of it has been due to COVID. One of the one of the things, there's two stories I was gonna it popped into my head. One, because this is a good conversational
Hmm.
podcast we got going on
Yeah.
here. So I hope you don't mind me telling you a couple of
No,
stories. But
yeah.
one was an extremely big woman of the mum of the Callahan family when I was in school. Oh man, Mrs. Callahan. That's all I knew what her name was. I don't know what her real name was. But and her sons were my best friends.
Oh.
And probably my tormentors. No, me and they were like a rough Irish family.
Hmm.
Light fingers. Fatty Callahan, as the police called him, was one of her sons, and he burgled my one neighbor 9 times and my other neighbor like 11 times or some
Oh.
shit like that. Yeah, yeah, he never touched us though because I went to school with him, so it
Oh,
was
that's
all
good.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't believe. I reckon he's the one who stole my bike. Anyway, but this Callahan family were a bit rough. I mean, my best friend was Adrian Callahan, and we got into loads of trouble when we were young. Well, one day, Patrick Callahan, who was violent as hell, left me with in a one fight we had. He left me with scars across my face for about 5 years. He's a really vicious kid. That's Fatty Callahan.
Mhm.
He got expelled from the school, kicked out, and that was really rare. And his mum come in to have a go at the headmaster. We remember going to the office, and there was a load of shouting, and then there was a thud, and then she walked out of the office, and she'd been carrying a big bag of potatoes the entire time. And then she knocked out our headmaster with one
Oh,
swipe of the potatoes, and he was knocked out
dang.
in the room. It was fantastic stuff. Oh man, she was a good one. But during COVID, oh my God, the one of the most frustrating because I had loads. I had loads. I had
Hmm.
ones where I'm traveling in between countries, going backwards and forwards,
Yeah.
and there's like loads of points in flights where they were like, no, we need to check this or check this,
Hmm.
and it's like I'm the last one. On one, I had paid to make sure that I was going to be in the express queue, so I could go first, and
Hmm.
everybody could go for the thing. And I still got on the plane last because the woman asked me why my signature looked that way. My God, how can you explain to someone why your
What?
signature looks that way? She wouldn't let me get on the plane because my signature looked that way. And I was just like, but it's my signature. You don't get to
Yeah.
choose what my signature looks like. It's so frustrating. But there was the worst one was in Cardiff. It was insane. It's just down the road from where I am now. There's this vets. Oh my God, the people there. I feel so sorry. They used to be the best vets around, and
Hmm.
I got a lovely dog called Bella, and she's a little chalky. And I took her down to the vets to have something done. I think she had to
Hmm.
be chipped, something like that. Went in and they got this lovely outside garden bit, and I said, "Is it all right if I drop her off with you?" And I'm exempt. I even had an exemption like
Oh,
thing
nice.
around
Yeah.
my neck.
Hmm.
So my housemate found it on the street. It was fantastic. Like just stopped.
Nice.
You'd want it to, you'd think it stopped the crash. It didn't stop anything. It's the people
Uh,
were still dicks all of the time, so I
of
stopped
course.
wearing it because
Hmm.
I only wore it a few times. And so I'm saying, oh, it stopped. It stopped absolutely bloody nothing, really, and like once or twice maybe. But I said to her, I said to this woman in this vet's like, oh, yeah, I'll sit outside because I don't want to put on the mask. And and she was like, oh, all right. And I said, well, I'll drop her off, go away, come back 15 minutes later, sit outside in the garden. And then when they were just getting her ready, I said, is it all right if I quickly pop in, grab a couple of these little like doggy things that they have on the
Hmm.
side, and then I'll go back out and I can pay for them outside. And they said, yeah, all right. And I went inside and I picked up one too, and I was like 3, and it was like a little dog coat and stuff, and a little dog toy and whatnot. It's puppy and need puppy stuff. So I was just getting the last thing, and the vet manager come out, and she screamed like a banshee. She was like, "Ah, and I was just like, I did ask. I'm gonna go sit back outside. She's like, get out, get out. And so the chick kicked me out. So I'm sitting in the garden, and they still got my puppy, and I'm like, okay. And they're like, okay, you have to pay now. And I said, no. First of all, I want to speak to the manager and have a conversation with her, because that was just insane. I
Oh
recorded
yeah.
all of this because of course, I just I had my phone in my hand recorded.
Yeah.
And I was like, because that was really insane. And I'm really calm. And she just came out and started screaming and shouting at me. And before, they gave me Bella. And I said, but before I pay, I want to have a
Mhm.
conversation with her about how you
Yeah.
treat people and how you have a conversation with people and treating people nicely and understanding that not everybody is handling the pandemic in the same way and all of this. And they went inside and they talked a little bit with her. She refused to come out and speak with me. And they came back out and they said, okay, we're not going to charge you for any of this, but you have to leave the premises or we're going to phone the police. And it's like,
Jeez.
wow, that is. So
Wow.
I went. So yeah, but I picked up the puppy, and I'm like things like this tend to happen to me in life. Like it just like I make a small stand about something, and then the
Mhm.
shit comes back. That's the way
Yeah.
it works. So it keeps happening over and over, and has happened throughout my life. So I went back to my wonderful monkey, my brother from another mother, who's a
Yeah.
co-owner of this lovely puppy, and when I was in Chile, was training her up, so she'd be the best puppy in the world, because she is like
Nice.
the best dog in the world. But yeah, it came back, and I was like, okay, this happened, and he was like, it must have been you. There's no doubt that this must have been you. And he had just pulled his arm. He had been, I can't remember if he was playing rugby or football, but he had his arm in a sling, and
Mhm.
he went down to this his vet, and he went in, and he was just gonna he literally was just gonna open up the door and just say to the woman, is it okay if I speak to you about what's just happened with my housemate? And she ran at the door, and she kept slamming the door while screaming on his arm, which was like up in a sling. And it was just insane. He come back, he was like, okay, that was obviously not you.
Yeah.
Definitely not you on that occasion. And it was just like within this whole thing, it was just like this erratic fear that I'd never seen before in people in some areas. And it turned out that I tried to change vets, and then it turned out that the vets, like this blanket company, owns basically nearly all the vets
Oh
in the
God. So
area.
they
Yeah,
can.
and they all have the same they all have the same policy, and they all wanted to know why we're moving the dog and etc. And they all wouldn't accept it. And the worst thing is the overarching like company is called something like Independent Vets Limited. It's got like independent in the
Okay.
title, and it's got like 200 and something vets or something. It's such a rip
Oh
off,
God.
such a gun. Yeah, I know, but I mean that's that type of behavior
Hmm.
during the pandemic. I think all we just saw was people's real reaction under pressure,
Yeah.
and it was just a little bit of pressure.
Something you
So
had mentioned. Oh, I'm sorry.
no, go for it.
Um, I I try to find this balance of, especially now that I'm more. Oh, I mean, I'm not by any means any expert. I'm still fairly new to this, but listening to likes yourself and other, independent media, obviously I'm more aware of things now, not to any expert level, but different than before. And I try sometimes I forget when people would freak out and lose their mind or certain things. I was like, they're not, maybe not into their own fault. That, I mean, how would they find half this stuff? Like I could barely find it at first. And then once I did, it was easier, and different alternative media aspects. But like, if you're just Googling or YouTube, I mean, good luck finding half of, your stuff. I mean, I know you can still have a lot of your stuff up, but I'm sure some's been taken down, and I've had a ton of mine. Like, I
Man,
mean,
loads taken down, especially on YouTube. Loads
mhm.
hidden. lots of search. But in Chile, it was really bizarre. I went to show this guy, even my music, like I got music out that's actually out
Jeez.
on like, and it's actually released on all the different platforms and stuff. And I tried to show this guy in Chile, and he was like, "Oh, what's your name?" And he put in my name, and no result come up at all. Like
Oh, even the music?
yeah,
Jeez.
nothing come up. It was just completely did not. I'm not there at all. And I was like, oh
Wow.
wow, that's fucking.
Uh, yeah, that's some
That's the
shady
way it
stuff.
looks to when you see the other side through someone else's technological device. I think,
Hmm.
and you won't see that within the algorithms have got to be so clever now.
Yeah,
Um,
they really do.
so you're let's get round to what you're talking about, what
Yeah.
you're doing at the moment. So
Yeah.
can you explain to people where this started, what had the idea, where you
Yeah.
had the idea, and what it is?
So it kind of led, I know I mentioned him before, Scott Armstrong, who had his own show. And I talked to him a lot, and we started doing shirts for him and other independent media like, Steve Poikonen and others with AM Wake Up, who's awesome dude. Love Steve. And many others. And I was like, man, the one downside, I mean, I live far from work and traffic stinks, but the upside is I get to listen to you guys a lot. So if I'm stuck in traffic for 2 hours one way, I get some good shows in, especially if when Ryan has a 4 hour show and I'm on that day, that helps. I can get half of that out of the way. Um, but I was like, a lot of people, I know some will just never, right? They'll just be like, I don't want to listen. I don't care. I'm going to go my way. But there are a lot of people I feel are open to things, but they're not being exposed to it. And I know I don't, I know I'm fairly new to it. I had multiple goals. One, I kind of wanted to archive stuff for myself, especially everything you guys are doing, because how much it gets censored or pulled off. And I was like, I'd like to keep this for myself. I'd like to keep some of it for my kids, so they can see it. Not obviously now they wouldn't understand it, but as they get older, just as like an archive of what's going on, but
A
also more
subjective
to,
library.
yeah, kind of collection. And then if I can share it even with people I know and one person can share that, or if it just because I'm in a new, not necessarily new genre, but I haven't been crazy censored yet other than YouTube, that maybe I can get around some of these algorithms and put people like yourself out of clips. And then from there, even though it's not the full show all the time, it's a lot of times it is pretty big chunks, like 40 minutes here, 50 minutes there. But if someone could even be like, oh, I really like, I saw New World Next Week with James Evan Pilato and James Corbett. Who the heck are these guys? This is awesome. And then they could just click the link, here's a highlight. And they could, I mean, yeah, if they want to watch mine, that's great. But if it could push them more towards yourself, the Corbett's, everyone else kind of out there, like get them exposed to as much as possible and then decide their own opinion from there. Like, maybe they don't always agree with everybody, and that's fine. But if we can have open dialogue and dialect and listen and get a different point of view than, even the higher up, I know we mentioned, the higher up in the indie media of like the Rogans and the Russells. It's like, I know that's where it seems to be kind of going, but I know that can lead people down there. But maybe if they even started there and then from there, they could get to and not get sucked in and just get away from, even though corporate media is going to be dead soon anyway, but, away from that and just, if they can just be exposed to it. That was kind of my goal. If I can do
Yeah,
any part in that. Yeah.
I think there's a massive amount of interesting things happening at the moment. I mean, it's obviously the mainstream media, and we've talked about this off camera.
Mm-hmm.
The mainstream media is faltering, falling, crashing to the ground, minus 80% plus approval rating. So it's doomed. They're doomed. They're going to crash. And there's a selection of other ways to take in news, but also lots of different platforms being put up and advertised heavily into people's faces. And when you talk about the brands and the
Mm-hmm.
Rogans, and I know from my own point of view, like or my own opinion, I'd say the Iversons and the Redacteds
Yeah.
at level, which
Mm-hmm.
shoot the same headlines at people. Look at this dangerous thing. Look, this is going to kill you. This is going to hurt you. That sort of like
I agree.
it feels like the opposite of what we're supposed to be on the independent media. We're not supposed to be scaring people. We're supposed to be bringing people information that's exact and correct. The fear porn is them upstairs. So if the mainstream media is dying because of all of their fear porn, to replace it with a different brand of fear porn seems like a completely and utterly ridiculous task. And I watched Russell Brand. I mean, if you talk about Russell Brand, I watched Russell Brand try and turn himself into some sort of like Buddha figure by talking to Yuval Noah Harari and people who were big into the Dark Enlightenment, and
Yeah.
like sort of bring these people like just he in so many ways I love him. In so many ways I love him.
Yeah.
In so many ways I think he's doing exactly what he sees the a big game between the old world order and this technocratic world order. And the old world order is what we used to call the new world order.
Right. Yeah.
It's just not anymore, is it? It's definitely
true.
the old world order. It's dead. It's like the mainstream media and its tentacles are emblematic of that old world order and how it's
That'd be a funny shirt, actually.
Yeah.
The old order.
Yeah. But this technocratic world order, where it leads, this is a different thing. It's being sold off. I mean, purposely sold off to these people. So the people who are taking control now are big tech giants who are going to be funding, I don't know, platforms like Rumble, who are going to be the ones who are in charge of all of these different platforms where we put out all our stuff. And of course, then if all of the people who want to make content, and there's a lot of them, look up and say, what are the people who are getting loads of views? What are they doing? You know, I could get loads of views, but they don't realize that a load of those views are fake. Loads of those views are bought for. A load of advertising goes into those views. But they also don't realize the sides that these people are actually on, and that following them means they are becoming aligned, and they are showing their allegiance to an ideology that they don't even understand. They're just stuck within following that that word, internet word. And this is one of the reasons why it's so important what you're doing. And it seems like such a simple idea. Oh, you take the best clips out and you put them in, but it's not being done properly because people go too far up there, don't they? When this has, I don't think there's actually on the this alternative media that we're on this level where I believe you're more likely to hear the truth than anywhere above. So whether it's true or not, it means that all of this information swimming around is more likely to be the truth. Don't believe it is all true, and this is why like people like Brian Christian saying question everything is like a really important thing.
It is
to push out.
Question everything they're putting out and the narrative, and he even says question myself, which I like that, because then it holds you accountable, because I find myself, I catch myself even with a Corbett, or someone is like, you like what they say, right? And it kind of like, this is amazing. His documentaries are amazing. And then you're like, I should still question him though. As much as you like him, you don't want to get in that same cycle of blindly following anything. And
every single one of the guys on the alternative media, man, woman, child, they've all got foibles. I can promise you. I've seen right inside a load of it, and I've been like, oh, right, well, humans are humans. So we're all the same, but there is an element. The reason why we are alternative media is we're pushed out of the mainstream, or we're pushed out of the bigger channels, and that will continue to happen. So you're going to go on with making these shows. How do you see it evolving? Have you got like any ideas for what you, or have you, because you said, you've had censorship on YouTube, and you must have like tried out on a few different platforms. What's your feeling of it?
Yeah, so I would say I need to do better of getting it out a little more. I wanted to take a page out of a handful of people, even like yourself, that I think if you, especially now with, I mean, we still have the censorship issue in a lot of places, obviously YouTube, but if you can just shoot it out as many places and see if it sticks in that sense. Like I know Free Thought Project, they're trying to do that. Corbett, even as much as he hates YouTube, and Ryan does that. I don't know if you've seen his pirate streams he does on YouTube, where he's just taking people's accounts and just keeps popping it up everywhere. Just for the fact that if you could just reach one person, that's always a good thing. Um, that's what I need to do. So right now I just have YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey. I've been trying to get on Rockfin, but that's kind of a work in progress. And I was doing BitChute. I just need to be better at. They take like a smaller format upload. So I've heard Brighteon and a bunch of other ones. I should probably just keep splattering out as much as possible, other than just Twitter. And then my main page just is where all the links are for people like yourself. And then there was a group called like Indie News Network, and they reached out and they said, hey, you should throw this on a Substack too, just to keep it going out there. Same kind of concept of like, here's all the links, here's the video for the week, just slap it out there. Just someone sees it, then it's just getting more of those media members out.
You'll also find with what sticks, and finding out what sticks. You just got to keep doing it. And this is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying about this being full. There's fundamentally no review show for this level sort of stuff, and it is very important. It's very important that I can say what I think should be on it, and you can say what you think should be on it. But it's the same thing with NEWSPASTE. I am trying to personally remember to include the other side.
Yeah.
It's something that is really hard to get a grip of sometimes, because sometimes it's just so far out that it's just like, wow. Right. So apart from this is probably going to evolve as you go. I would say that I personally decided at the moment I'm just like, I upload to free platforms and I keep my stuff on a hard drive, knowing that eventually it's probably going to have to go up to another platform when they pull down my channels on whatever various. Rumble is a teal platform, and a lot of what I see happening in the future is going to mean saying bad stuff about Peter Thiel. So why set yourself up with a platform that you can censor people saying stuff about yourself, unless it's for that reason, and then promote out big names on it, get everybody on board, and then boom, you've got your and it's interesting additions on the Rumble when you put in your videos. There's a couple of things where it's like, put in your name, who's in this video and stuff, where was it recorded, those sort of details is like, ooh, cheeky. They're trying to see more. And on one occasion I put in at my handle on what's your name, or what was your YouTube channel, and it linked across, and the video instantly got pulled from YouTube. So it somehow notified. It literally, I pressed it, published, email. This video's been taken off YouTube, and I just put in at John at NEWSPASTE HQ or whatever it was. So there's obviously a censorship platform being built up. This idea of going across everything, how is it? I take it you're just at the beginning of this journey yourself. So it's just a case of fumbling around and finding what's best. What are the best? Like, what's the best reaction you've had? Which platforms have been the most lucrative in the amount of view counts or interactions, do you think?
Yeah, sadly, probably YouTube still. Through Twitter. I try to post all of them on Twitter so everyone can see each one. Rumble would be the second. Odyssey, the lowest. And I totally see what you're doing with the thing you were talking about with Rumble, because I had that happen to me this last week's episode with having it linked with YouTube, and it pulled it instantly.
Yeah.
After
Thiel.
Yes.
Don't trust Peter Thiel.
No.
Just saying.
Bad dude.
Just saying. Yeah. He's a bad dude. He's the Dark Lord.
It's almost like the weeks YouTube gets pulled, my Rumble does better, and the weeks it doesn't, then YouTube does a little better. And probably just because it is so mainstream, I hate it. Like I get not supporting, flat platforms that aren't free speech, but at least if I can get it out,
I
I'm
agree
not.
completely with that. That's the
Yeah,
best one. I think that's the best
yeah,
one. I really do not agree with the don't use certain platforms. I think
yeah.
those are the ones you've got to piss off the most, and you've got to keep
Yes, I like doing that.
infiltrating. Yeah, it only takes a couple of people to be uh, interested enough to go somewhere else and support your work in another way.
Yeah.
But it's also the increasing, because that's the one thing that I didn't do from the off when I started out. I didn't start asking for supporters straight away because I was bumbling around, not knowing what I was doing and trying to
Hmm.
work out what I was doing as I go
Sure.
along, which is what we all do. And then you realize there's a load of support there, and has been there all along if you're able to vocalize what your specific deal is,
Hmm.
and a lot of our deals on the indie media or the alternative media, whatever you'd like to call it, is that ability to bring information that you don't get anywhere else. Um, it's
Yes.
very specific. So I think that's obviously a place where you're going to stay within.
Right.
What else? What else does a dude like to do, man? What else? I mean, you do your t-shirts. You've obviously got a family. You've got
Yeah.
an extremely obedient dog, except for squirrel. I
Yeah.
mean,
Squirrel antics.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
what else are you into? Because I know you like some sports, don't you?
I do. I do. I've uh I've gone I would say a weird journey too since kind of 2019 going into 2020 of being into like every type of social media, doing everything to being like I don't want to be part of any of it, you know. And then when I got back into this, it was like a whole new. I had deleted everything just because I was sick of it, especially during 2020. It's like I can't. I just want to listen to you guys. I don't want to deal with it. And now it's getting back into it and realizing, trying to find other ways to get around it. So that's a new kind of journey for me, just like getting back into this kind of media of not that I, just reposting obviously. As far as my life, I mean, I love, yeah, kids number one. I mean, whatever, we're just always doing stuff with my daughter and my son, 3 and 6. So it's a pretty fun age now. We're past I mean, you still have sleepless nights, obviously, but not the every, wake up every 2 hours for feedings. Those are past. So that's nice. Um, Anything with my kids, they're starting to get into some stuff. Little guy, I'm trying to get him to do some rugby to have fun. He's into every sport. My girl, she's doing dance and gymnastics, and she likes rugby too. So we'll see. I don't know if my wife would be into that. She's a
It's
little
not.
more delicate, but if she
It's
could
not.
toughen
It's
it up,
not the most well-known sport in the U.S., I suppose.
no, no, it's not. It's a little more niche over here. It has grown. It has grown. It has grown a lot though. I started playing it. Started playing in high school. I ended up starting my own team at my high school because we didn't have it. And then, played in college, came back and coached the high school team for a while. I mean, when I played, I think I started 2002. So I'd have been a sophomore in high school. And there was maybe like 5 teams between here and the state next to us. And now every high school has a team. So it's better. It's not to the degree of, football, baseball, basketball, where there's a freshman, JV, varsity. There's just like one team. So it's a tough thing to coach where you have freshmen playing seniors. It's a little rough.
Mm.
So yeah, it's nothing like in Wales or the UK or Australia or New Zealand or any of those. I mean, they got a long way to go, but I do still
My
play time to time. It's fun. There's some good clubs out here, and that's where I've met a lot of guys from other countries that are always good mates. And um, that's probably the only sport I really will kind of dink around with to play. I'm a little older now, so it's a little tougher to, not as easy to
recover.
recover.
Recovery
I'm
is
not
going to
what I
be
used to
all
be.
about the recovery. In
Yeah.
my school, you weren't allowed to play football. You were only allowed to play rugby. It was just rugby, rugby, rugby. If they gave you a little bit of time off rugby and you play like rounders, like a basic version of baseball where it's not really anything competitive, so you
Hmm.
weren't gonna get any ideas above your station, and unless you were the athletics and could do with the best kid at long jumps or whatever, you just weren't trained up in any other ways, just rugby, rugby, rugby. And about 2 years after I left, 3 years after I left, I heard that the kids got on the coach and they thought they were about to leave, and then they all got off the coach just before the rugby match and refused to get on unless they included football as well, as
Oh
in
wow.
soccer,
Yeah.
into the curriculum, and had a soccer team because a load of them also wanted to play football. You know, it's one of the most popular sports in the
Oh yeah.
UK. Why wouldn't you want to? But
Yeah.
there's no doubt that in Wales, you're not going to lose rugby. Very
Yeah, that's for
easily.
sure. Hmm.
It's like deeply ingrained. It's one of the moments where, and rugby, I mean, a lot of people don't realize that rugby is very much a gentleman's sport. There's
Yes,
very little arguing, even though there's so much aggression. There's actually very little arguing, and everybody abides by the rules. And there's no,
they do.
yeah. Though I did see, and I told you this off camera before. I went with my sister.
Hmm.
It was probably, I'm looking at my watch, probably 1993, 1994. And I went and watched Pontypool, which is a little place just north of Cardiff. Pontypool. Ponty, I don't know if it's, Ponty's just a bridge, so it's Pontypool.
Yeah.
But it's a very small place. Valley's Town, really big boys in the
Oh.
Pontypool rugby team. You don't want to mess with them. And they were playing the USA national team, and we went and
Oh, they
watched it in
must have
Cardiff Arms
crushed.
Park. It was the most. It was like a comedy. It was like watching a comedy because as soon I talk about gentlemanly, but what you had was a load of Americans who were unaware of how violent life was going to be
Yes.
for them, and every time the referee was distracted, telling off one Pontypool player for hurting an American off the
Oh
ball, there was a lot of head stamping, like stamping on heads and kicking and stuff,
God.
and people getting up and going, I don't understand. He just stabbed on me. Can you do this over here? Can you like sounded? There was one guy. It was sounded like John McEnroe. He was like, "Are you serious?" Like he just couldn't believe that this was happening. But I mean, there was a view. I think, especially in Wales, that the Americans were
Hmm.
were not the toughest at rugby. They didn't understand, so
They don't. There's a
we
lot
get
that don't.
taught a
It's
lesson.
it's getting better because they even started, at least in Oregon, they have like flag and youth, like really young little kids now starting it. It's just so tough to compete with American football, even soccer and baseball, basketball. Those are just such mainstream, youth, like from the little bitty kids. So they're really doing better. There's a couple guys I used to work with here when I coached that were helping the youth program, and they all the elementary schools getting in the PE program. So even just introducing it, even as like touch, just playing touch.
Yeah, which is
And
really fun, super fun.
yeah, it's so fun. I used to go, like, they had a high school down here and it'd be all ages, guys in their 80s, little kids, and we'd all just get together, play touch once a week. Um, but I agree. So I'm hoping down the road, the more exposure than, when I even coached in high school, it's usually their first time playing rugby or seeing a ball. So it's like I have to reintroduce the sport, and that's whereas, like, you're playing football in high school, you've played since third grade, you know what you're doing. These kids don't. and
Yeah.
and yeah, I've even noticed even at the college level. I've been fortunate enough to, when I first started, half the guys I played with were from Tonga, so they taught me a lot of their. Those are some big boys, and they taught
Yeah.
you some good sneaky, tricky. Uh, and I told you off with a couple of guys I know from Scotland and England, uh, and one guy we call Frenchie from France. He had his own style, and but you learn so much from each country, and like the way they play a little bit differently, and the stuff that they do well. It was so much different than the U.S. And gosh, I mean, I like watching U.S. rugby because it's something to watch, but gosh, I mean, New Zealand comes to play, it's like 105-0.
I I I remember my first job, like proper job, was a Hilton hotel, 5-star opening hotel, opening at the same time as the Millennium Stadium, which was
Oh,
one of hosting the
yeah.
Rugby World Cup in
Yeah.
1999. And my girlfriend at the time, her mum worked in the hotel I was working in. As they all worked there, and I remember Jonah Lomu himself
Oh,
with him with her mum over his shoulder running through the lobby of the Hilton. She was like a housekeeper cleaner around the place. He picked her up and ran her around the place, showing off because that's what those are. But I mean, that was
that's a sight.
God, man. I mean, it was when you live in a place like Cardiff where rugby is second nature and there's always
Yeah.
the big teams come into play and all of these teams like wander around the city,
Yeah.
when they're not, they go into I've been plenty of times where I've been in even somewhere like McDonald's or something behind a load of the one of the
Yeah.
national teams, like they're just the same boys doing the same things, and because it's less fame, like in the same way, it's like
Hmm.
a lot of it is family. It's a lot of people saying, "Oh,
Yes.
can I have my pictures taken? You're great. I love you." And there's a lot of love
Hmm.
all of the time, but it's really gentle, and a lot of people don't bother people. So it's like rugby's
Yeah.
slightly different, or even in the places where it's big, it's slightly different. You're right; they've all got their little styles and their little ways,
Hmm.
and they're all. But there is one thing that is true about all rugby players, I think, on earth. They're all cheeky, really
Yes.
cheeky boys, and I think that's
You have
why they end up.
something's loose just to get out there and play.
They're just
And
naughty.
it's fun. And it is, what are they, was it a hooligans game played by gentlemen, or is it a gentleman's game played by hooligans? I forgot the exact saying, but it's but it's true. And the community, I've never run into, like, compared to other sports, at least, from a US perspective, where it's such like a cool community where everyone's just like, you'll kill each other on the field and like 2 seconds later you're having a pint afterwards and just like singing, having fun. Like, it's a good, welcoming, like, just a good old, like, boys having fun. I like
Yeah,
that part.
no hissy fits like in a
Yeah,
soft.
they get over it, they'll
There's
make a
no
joke of, yeah,
yeah,
there's none
no
of the
grown
flopping.
men screaming
No.
and shouting and showing
Yeah.
off
Hmm.
their bits to people. Well,
I'd always teaching kids they respecting the ref, is a different thing. Because even here, basketball, football, people are screaming at the ref, and I was like, "Well, you have to address him as sir," and they're like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah, no, that's a thing. That's a thing. You gotta. It's a
yeah,
different
yeah.
world. Like, it's a
And you'll
yeah.
you'll you'll be off the field if you don't,
Oh
and
yeah,
you'll have your head down. You'll be like, oh, and everybody will be
yeah.
going, oh no.
Oh,
No, and the families will be crying, the kids and the
oh,
crowd crying.
disappointment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mama ain't gonna give you that extra Yorkshire pudding tonight, boy. No, anyway. Uh, well, listen, thanks
Yeah,
for joining me today.
for
Thanks for
sure. Thanks for having me.
so I mean, I'd say where can people find you? But we've told a lot of
Yeah,
people a lot of places to find you. But where's the main hub? I mean, you said where's the best place for people to start off?
yeah. I'd say um, probably the best would be even the webpage, indreview.org, just because I was too cheap to get .com. It was easier. And then Twitter, I'm pretty sure it's the IND review, app. And I just repost all your guys' stuff on there. Anything I think, kind of, even if it's funny, I'll try to slap it up there, but I'll pin whatever the current episode is. But the website will have all the links. That's the important thing, is the links and the credits to you guys. So that way you can go directly to your video, a Corbett video, anyone, like, it's right there. There's no deep description, it's very simplistic, but it'll be, this week's episode, here you go. Click on that. That way you can get to the real, source, which I think is important to get to your guys' stuff. Because I'm just I just want to get people exposed to it. Is my, goal.
Yeah, I like that. I like what you're doing. Of course, it's positive for the community as a whole, and whether people but believe one side or another,
Hmm.
or one person or another. Questioning everything and having everybody's
Yeah,
story down there is the most important thing, and is exactly what I like to see, and is exactly what I want to do in NewsPaste, and that's why I'll be also happy to support your work, and I'll put your stuff out every
I
week,
appreciate it.
and
Yeah.
links to what you do, because it's brilliant stuff. Ryan, thank you for joining me on the NewsPaste podcast.
Thank you, Johnny. I appreciate it so much. This was fun.
Rocket, we'll do it again sometime.
All right. Cheers.